getting anybody call you?
Yes, Jeremy and I did speak today.
Very good. Give us a rundown of it.
Well, it was a good conversation. You know, I understand more, and I'll give you both the facts and the color. How's that?
Good.
So the facts being that on the van, it's a 1-ton van, similar to what you see Amazon driving around town.
Yeah.
High top so that you can stand up inside of it. Those are Dodge. This is Ford. Doesn't matter. 1-ton van, all-wheel drive, outfitted with tool racks, etc. inside of it. You know, base price of the van is around $38,000. So then you got about $12,000 in accessorization to it. From everything I could tell, based on I went on Ford.com and built one to kind of get where, you know, to get to the 50 grand.
Yeah.
So that's what they're looking to purchase. They don't want to buy anything used.
Right.
Secondarily, yeah, they just think, oh, we'll have somebody else's problems. And I wasn't going to argue or anything. I just, okay, well, you know, just asking the question.
Right.
Same thing with the mower. It's they don't want to purchase anything used. That's the mower they want and is best suggested. I talked a little bit about the assets that they currently have, you know, under their control, being, you know, the existing mower. And he said, oh, you know, this year it needed $3,000 worth of repairs. I said, yeah, I understand that. He says, you know, it's likely to need, you know, a couple $1,000 in repairs every year if we keep it. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, $2,000 a year, that means we get 50 years out of it. No, I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean. And we talked about that, and I talked about used again there, and he said, Dave, at the highway department, Russ is the mechanic, I believe, said that, you know, well, you really don't want to get anything used, and we'll just be repairing it. And I told him what I was able to locate online and the hours on it. He seemed pretty opposed to having something used as opposed to something new. And you know, I explained, look, you know, I mean, we have to ask the question because it's a pretty big expense for a lawnmower. And he understood that it's a big expense. We talked a little bit about, you know, kind of in a de facto way, the workshop. I didn't ask about it particularly, but, you know, I just asked about, you know, maintenance because they currently have a 2004 F350 Super Duty that had a new motor put in it a couple of years ago. And they have a 2019 F350 Super Duty as well that they use currently. And the van would be in addition to those two vehicles. And I talked about, you know, repairing and working on things. And he said, well, yeah, you know, he and Russ, let me just double check my names here. Dave DeRoche at the highway department get along well. And, you know, it's just that, you know, the place, and these are his words, so I wrote them down. You know, the place is such a mess, you really can't go in there to work. If the town people, the selectmen actually went in there, they'd be appalled at all the crap that's stacked up everywhere. So it's not an issue, from what I could tell, of, you know, not having space there. It's just, you know, it's probably not well organized or well used currently. And we got a lot of background noise tonight. Is that you guys or is that me?
There's a lot of breakup here on the audio. Does someone have anything turned on in their space, any fans or anything turned on? What's our problem last time?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
the only one home, so it's quiet.
The static has gone away on mine.
Okay, yeah, it's gone away on mine as well. So we talked about that, and he did give me the example of, you know, trying to go over there to sharpen some lawnmower blades, and he had cleaned off their workbench, went out to decide to get some stuff, and they already had another project on the workbench, so he wasn't able to use the space. He said, and in his comment, there's plenty of space. It's just, there's stuff everywhere, and it's kind of a mess inside the highway garage. So neither here nor there. That's his opinion. Again, it's not fact based. It's somebody's opinion. But that is inherently why the request for their own workspace, because that and the time to bring projects over there to work and things like that. So that's the basis of the whole conversation. They were against used in either case, and when it comes to the space, they just it doesn't seem to be a personality issue. It seems to be more of a you just can't go in there.
Okay, let's take them in the order you gave them. On the transit vehicle, it sounds like, in fact, that they were not then purchasing the specified vehicle, but instead they were buying one already fully interiorly equipped. Is that correct?
They're buying a vehicle and having it equipped with the necessary racking and tool storage and that inside of it. So all those vans come basically empty, and then the dealer does the outfitting based on what you need.
Okay. So that I think one of our concerns was that they were, because we'd heard they wanted shelving and things like that inside. Was that going to be another expense that was going to be added to the cost of the vehicle? But that's already built.
That's part of the total cost doing the build. I went on, like I said, Ford.com and took a base a Transit 350 series van, all-wheel drive, same motor drivetrain that you would get in it, base just white, no special color or anything like that, and base cost was $38,000. Then if you go through and start outfitting it with tool rack and storage and things like that, I got it to like 49 and change pretty quickly. So to me, that seems like how they're going about it: base van and then having the dealer outfit it.
Yeah. You got any opinion on the appropriateness?
My whole question, and it doesn't matter at this point because water in the bridge, is what was the appropriateness of the actual department to begin with, a separate thing. Neither here nor there. I mean, if we're going to support this department, at this point, we probably have to say, we would get them the van, right? Because if he's got to go building to building around town and haul floor buffers and burnishing machines for the floors and, take, things here or there around town, he needs a method to do it. An open pickup truck, certainly isn't ideal for that type of movement of equipment. So I would say it's appropriate, relative to the fact that the department exists.
Yeah, that's my question. You can't really get into the other.
No, I'm just adding my color. Sorry.
That's right. So, Bob or Scott, you have any comments or thoughts?
So if the department is more legit than we were thinking before, are we still going to be against the pavilion part of it?
Well,
I would still personally challenge the workspace piece, because if what he says is true, and the highway garage is, in shambles, and there's just crap stuff over there, plenty of space, but can't be used because of disorganization, that's a whole separate issue. That should be handled, because why would we spend money if we don't need to, right? But we have to ask who's going to take up that issue, and if the select board isn't willing to take up the issue, our hands are kind of tied, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
On just the vehicle itself, Scott, what's your thought?
I don't know. I'm like a little torn here, Like, we voted against it. Can we change our mind?
And we did, actually, we didn't vote really at all because we,
Postpone that?
yeah.
I don't know, there's inefficiency of the garage being, disorganized, but I mean, I think Dave DeRocher does a pretty good job. If it's messy, um, or if
It
his
could just be a resource thing, Scott. I mean, he just might not have the people to keep it as nice as he would want to. I'm not indicting him. It's just, it's a shame if there's space to build another space.
yeah, but I mean, we're not operations. We're just
Oh, we're not. We are not. You're
kind of hard for us to, if the select board aren't willing to step in, or Chris isn't willing to step in, then, how do we do that?
Well, there's one thing for sure. If we were to say, go ahead with everything, it's, the issue is never going to be resolved. The only way we can save the money is if somebody takes a strong hand with the organization in the building.
Let me bring us back to the transit vehicle. That's a separate item and a separate article, and seems to me to be independent of where they are. I think we've gotten information from a number of places that what they are requires something that's like this, just for their being able to move the equipment around all the buildings they're responsible for, and to work in the rain and snow.
So what buildings are they responsible for? Not the school.
Not the school, but the public safety, the library,
Council on Aging,
Town Hall Annex, the COA building.
right?
And the old library.
Yeah, the old library.
I mean, years ago, Dave did all that, like, in addition to his other stuff. And now we got a whole department with a couple guys and 3 vehicles and.
Well, some of that is because of the extra things that the highway department has given up on. And they were doing some of the maintenance, and they're now no longer doing any of the maintenance. Dave DeRocher was doing a lot of the stuff that's now being done by the public services building that
Right.
Dave Burkott was not doing. One example, I think, is the new library. That's a complicated system to operate.
The electronics in there were complicated and.
And the highways department is not doing that anymore.
Right.
So, the mowing was just one example. That's a summertime piece of it.
Back to the van issue alone, I don't have any problem with it. I didn't have any real problem with it before, other than the price. And it just seemed like an awful lot of money, but if it's already being equipped,
Yeah.
they're going to be buying it off of a bid list, so that it's the best, I won't say it's the best price you could possibly get, but it's certainly as good, pretty much as good a price as you're going to get. Because that's available to everybody in the state that needs that type of a vehicle.
Yeah, Granby doesn't make its own deals on buying these things. They work on the state bid list, right?
On the new stuff, yeah, and I because of the bidding requirements, when we were talking about used vehicles, I can understand why they might not want to buy some from a purely technical thing. I mean, obviously, if you can save a lot of money, they should, but writing it out, and then you've got to advertise it and whatnot. So it's nowhere near as simple a purchasing issue as buying something right off the bid list.
And then you're kind of on the hook if it's not what it's supposed to be, I guess. I mean, if you buy something used and it's,
Oh, Yeah.
you got
yeah,
lots of problems with it.
taking a photo.
You'd probably get as good a warranty as you would, I would suspect. You know, if you buy a used car, warranties are usually as good as buying a new car. Yeah, from a reputable dealer.
I guess I don't feel strongly one way or the other.
Okay, do we need any more discussion on it? Call for a motion. Before the article is written. We have a motion to approve the article is written.
I'll make a motion, but I'm gonna do it a little bit different than you might think. It's gonna be Article 26 on the draft town meeting warrant.
Yeah, and it's Article 13 on the second draft that we've given, and I'm not certain whether or not this has been changed already. Something that Lynn said made me think that. But I don't know. But let's not worry about the article exactly, except from information that we have. It's number 26 for what we had first go around, and number 13 for what we had the second go around. Okay. What kind of
Well,
motion?
I've got to put something in the minutes. That's why I wanted to do it with what I knew, knowing that conceivably whatever it is on the final, what is supposedly the final may not turn out to be, and then our minutes are technically a little out of whack.
Okay, what's your motion?
We recommend town meeting approve Article 26 of the draft town meeting warrant.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it, John.
Okay, Scott, you were off there for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion on this? If not, then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Rich, thanks for taking the time on that. Now,
No worries.
we've got the mower. And again, this is independent of workspaces that they have. The reluctance to buy something new, I suspect, comes from their experience and themselves in dealing with machines. And a lot can happen in 4 years. I think the question is that our current experience is that 8 years ago, we bought one for roughly $60,000,
A little less than that.
a little less than that. And it seems to have had its own merry time and falling apart in the years. Are we better off to buy?
I would assume though, a 10% increase year over year, in cost. If you say 8 years ago you bought something for 60, you're talking about, a 10% increase to now you're talking 120, 115 for, that. What they're buying is, again, to Bob's comment earlier, a couple meetings ago, the Cadillac of mowers. And I'm not opposed to giving somebody, certainly, a quality piece, but yeah, I'm still struggling with $115,000 expense on a lawnmower when we know we're going to have headwinds in the future. But if they're not willing to, look at used options, and looking at the type of mower, the main use for that mower is mowing fairways on golf courses. So the likelihood of getting something that's been beaten up is unlikely, but it is what it is. I mean, again, our position on it kind of sets the tone on a couple things, right? And
Yeah.
do you say you got to get by for another year till we know what's going on next year?
season's almost over. We'll take it up in the 2021 budget, and look at it then. And things are better, we'll address it at that time. I mean, we have options on this because I just don't like the precedent it sets, when we're leading out the meeting with a forward-looking statement that says there's potential headwind in the future, but oh, by the way, we want to spend 115 grand on a mower.
Yeah, it's okay to say that you don't like to buy something used, but I don't get the impression that there was actually any research done as to what was available in the used market and what its condition was likely to be. And
Or is there a Chevy version,
Yeah.
like a John Deere or something for 80 grand, or who knows, right?
yeah, we don't know anything about what it is they looked at, except that they didn't look at anything used. What I was told is that this one is in fact wider than the one that we have. The one we have is 14 feet wide with 2 wings, and this one is, I think, 16 feet wide with 2 wings.
That's correct. It's 2 feet wider.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. If we agree that we should never buy anything used, then we got one set of things to deal with. But if we don't believe that that is necessarily true for all circumstances, then I think we would prefer if they in fact did an analysis of what's available, both new and used, and make a recommendation upon really a thorough examination.
Is
rather
is
than willy-nilly.
is the existing mower not usable, or is it just tired?
No, it's usable. I talked to Jeremy about that, Scott, so great question. It just had an axle repaired on it. It does overheat after a couple hours of use, and then you have to use the leaf blower to blow the radiator out, which, to me is a repairable thing. I mean, I'm in the automotive business. I mean, I see car repairs and things every day. And it doesn't sound to me like it's not a usable mower, in that it's, it's just, probably not as reliable as they would like, currently. Maybe it needs some additional work. That I don't know. We didn't get into that, but it sounds to me like there's probably more life in it if it's taken care of. It feels so like a nice to have rather than a need to have.
Yeah, I guess that frames it pretty well in my book.
Let me bring the conversation around to this portion of it then. Among our options are saying that we shouldn't buy anything at all this year. It's just let's not spend $115,000. Let's wait until the next go around and hope that they do a thorough job of at least looking at used things. Or we could amend this and put in an amount of money that would be enough to buy a used mower, but not the new one. If we think that they want to proceed and we'll be able to in fact find something that fits, we would have something.
If we left the 115 number there, but in kind of somehow, no, okay. I was gonna say, that they did their diligence on picking a mower of value as opposed to the nicest one.
And now I think that if we set it up as the 115,000, then there are no restraints whatsoever on by new one that we would have thought. And if the rest of the town is as curious as we are as to what is so important about a $115,000 mower, then if they in fact want that, they'll be able to come back and tell the town why that's better than what's available on the used market.
So I'll listen better. What's your suggestion, John?
Well, if we set a $55,000 or $60,000 amount on this, then if they in fact investigated and found a used mower that would fit in that, then we'd be done. We wouldn't have to come back for anything. If they investigated and found a used mower or a different model of different new model of a mower, then they would have to come back to the town for the additional money. But it would, at least one of the options would be that they could go on and proceed to purchase if it was under a certain amount of money. And I just picked 60,000 because that seemed to cover what Rich had found in his quick search the other day. Is that correct, Rich?
Yeah, John, yeah, absolutely. But I liked your first option with, deferring till next year when we, know more, give them an opportunity to do more research on options. And mowing season, to Bob's point the other night on the meeting, is nearly over. I would rather see us, kick the can on this one and say, not knowing what the future holds, why don't we hold off and get by with what we have for the balance of this year and spring of next year. Town meeting comes up, then it comes back up, and things are good. Awesome, we buy a mower, right? But do some research between now and then.
Yeah, if I don't know that this is a realistic possibility, but if they just withdrew that now, then they would be easily free to bring it up at any future special town meeting as well as town meeting, if in fact additional research is done on mowers before that time. If it's defeated, isn't it harder to bring it back up as a motion? Or do you have to wait a year? Bob, do you know anything about it?
No, there's no legal reason why you have to. It's just obviously if something was defeated, to bring it back the same way, it's still fresh in everybody's mind that you've already defeated it, and somebody's just trying to force an issue.
Okay. So then our position.
I thought you mentioned put some money in there for a used vehicle. I don't think that's a good idea, because we don't know what a used vehicle is going to cost. So we can be accused of exactly the same thing as we're seeing them. You haven't done your homework. And I don't think it's our job to do the homework.
Okay.
But certainly I would have no problem saying that we would live with it, make do. We need some repairs, we'll take care of it out of the reserve fund. If it's, exceeds your repair budget.
It seems more consistent with what total message is.
So then we would say that we would bring it up for a vote in a minute. We would just vote our approval down, or our recommendation would be that this not be approved, and then try to give the message to the select board that our first preference would be if they would just withdraw the article and ask the department involved to go back and research used vehicles as well as new vehicles and additional models of newer vehicles. And that if they don't want to withdraw it, that's okay, but that at the town floor, we would basically say the same thing. We'd ask the town to vote it down and ask them to go back and study it more and say that $115,000 for a mower without all this additional justification, it seems like a lot of money for the times that we're in. Justify it, okay, but we haven't seen justification yet.
That's like $26,000 a foot.
It's pretty close to $26,000 a year of debt payments.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Article 25 in the first draft that we had, Article 12 in the second one. I'll take a motion that recommend that we vote that we recommend. I would take a motion that we recommend against approval of Article 12 or Article 25. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Yeah, so moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, if not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, it takes care of the two big purchases. All right, we now have two related articles. One is the article to spend the $14,000 to move the records. The second is the article to spend $14,800 for funding construction at the old library building or any other action in regard thereto, which is probably, the cleaning up in the basement and outfitting that, as well as the cleaning up in the old pavilion and outfitting that. Although I would have to double check to see if in fact includes construction in both. If it's something different, then we might have a different view. But right now, I think we have to assume that it is related entirely to the other article, that it is to establish a new workspace. Does that sound correct to everybody?
That does sound correct to me.
Okay,
May I offer an opinion on this, John?
absolutely.
I think, at least my head is telling me I would vote against this personally for two reasons. And my reasons are to challenge the town relative to record retention for now and the future, to move to some kind of electronic platform so we're not buying storage containers year after year. Secondarily, to force the issue, as Bob talked about earlier, to say, hey, look, we have plenty of space. We just need to get organized. Let's figure it out, right? And knowing that it's not a personnel issue where you could have a hostile workplace environment kind of situation that could cause the town, costs. I would think that by saying no, we're forcing two issues.
I agree with you.
Okay,
Hard to argue with that.
okay, so that our position on this one is that we would just recommend voting each of these down. And we would actually have a recommendation that each of these be investigated or thoroughly looked at by whatever joint group is necessary to do it, to determine what the real situation should be for retention of records, given that we're going to be passing new bylaws at some time and that will clean up whatever is said in the bylaws about it. And that there is in fact enough room, and we understand that it's not a house which is move-in livable, but it can be fixed up. It just takes some time and effort, and some willpower to do it that way.
I mean, they could do the same thing with this. They could withdraw this too, right?
Yeah. I don't put a lot of hope in them withdrawing things. But I'm gonna ask. And we don't have anything to hide. We're gonna tell them what the arguments are, the basic arguments. If they think they can counteract those arguments, then they'll probably just leave them on.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's their job. That's not
It would be nice if we could agree for the COVID meeting to make it smoother.
Yeah.
It seems like, they're making their decisions without us and we're making our decisions without them. You're going to talk to them.
It's not supposed to be that way, even though the current bylaws, it's not supposed to be that way, but the new bylaws, I think we're talking about the time frame in which things take place. So, okay, in the one article, the article on the $14,000 for the purchase of storage containers. Is Article 1M under the new system and was Article 14 under the first draft that we have. So I would take a motion to recommend, take a motion that we recommend against this Article 1M or Article 14.
I would move to recommend that we are against this article.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on the article? Any further questions? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The next one, last one, is the old Article 27, the new Article 14, or I'm sorry, the first draft we had, it was Article 27, and the second draft was Article 14. That's the article to raise appropriate $14,800 for funding construction at the old library building or taking the action thereof. I would also take a motion that we recommend against this article.
Before we do
Yeah,
that,
so moved, Tom.
wait a minute,
Oh,
time out.
sorry, Bob. Yeah, go, Bob.
We already approved that at our earlier meeting.
Okay, well, then I'll take a motion that we withdraw our
Motion to
approval.
rescind our earlier vote.
I'll take a motion that we rescind our earlier vote on this Article 27 or Article 14.
So moved.
A second, any discussion? If not, then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous to rescind the previous vote. And now the new vote on Article 14 or Article 27. See if the town raised an appropriate 14,800 funding construction at the old library building. I would take a motion that we recommend against this article.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second is,
Any further discussion on this? If not, then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None, thank you. All right, that I think, or Bob, do we still need to vote on?
Yep. on
Okay,
the free cash,
how are you
article.
recommending that we,
recommend that we approve it the way it is.
okay, all right,
Because Chris said he didn't, I mean, basically what he said was he wouldn't have any problem adjusting at the time of setting the tax rate.
Yeah.
By whatever amount there is. Obviously, if it became a monstrous amount, something could be done in the meantime anyways. But his opinion was that we didn't need it, and I think that it's fine. I mean, so far, what do we got? What was it? That library construction? Is
that's
that a
14 and
14.8, but I was wondering how were we paying for it?
I don't know. This is just well, I don't have the actual motions. This is just the generic warrant article.
I know, but I looked at the way it was set up on a,
Oh, I think they were coming out of free cash.
free cash, all right, so these two articles add up to a short 30,000, which is not a significant amount of adjusting on the final when we
Right.
do the tax rate.
Also, if we have a second town meeting, and that's completely, all right, I don't think people want to have a second town meeting unless things just really go completely haywire. But if there's a second town meeting, certainly these could be brought back up if more work is done on researching the issues before the second town meeting.
Yeah.
In which case the current amount on the use of free cash would be appropriate. So I don't have any problem with recommending. So this is the old Article 34, the new the first draft Article 34, second draft Article. I'm sorry, first draft Article 35, second draft Article 22, using $1,081,950 in free cash to reduce the tax levy. I would take a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Second.
Any further discussion or questions about that article? If not, then all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I think, Bob, that's all the articles, right?
that's right, that's all the articles.
Okay. All right. Been a long year. We're now at a point where we need to discuss the latest draft of our annual report. And this will be printed in the meeting booklet And I'm also going to ask that it be printed up in its entirety. This is giving a speech at the beginning. That was I hope you had a chance to read the memo from the email from Lynn, in which she suggested that not going to have opening speech either in the select board, but instead that they will write up what their remarks would have been, and they'll hand it out to people who come to the meeting. And that's fine with me. I assume it's okay with everybody else, right? The one thing which, as far as I'm concerned, is still up in the air is that we also have a recommendation that write our recommendations into the town booklet. And not that I'm opposed to that, it's that when our recommendations are very easily made that we recommend these articles, we haven't really given reasons, specific reasons on any specific articles. My reasoning has been that the collection in total are fine. It's within the financial wherewithal, they're good expenditures without justifying each and every one. And I would hope to be able to do that if we're supposed to write a recommendation rather than say something bland about each and every article. On the other hand, there are now 4 that we are opposed to. And again, I don't mind writing up that we're opposed to them and giving a brief start at what the reasons are, but we can't write up our 20-minute conversation on them. So if everybody who's pushing to have written comments on these understands that, then okay. Otherwise, it would be very, very hard for us to say we were going to be able to get across our objections.
That makes sense, John. I mean, bullet points, are probably the best way to go. Not paragraphs, right?
Right. And there's just, it's sort of like these are the topics that we consider when we're working against these articles. All right, I'll follow up. I'll follow up on that with Chris on Monday and whenever the board meets. I haven't heard any more about that, but I'll follow up on that. So should we go to the report itself?
Butt in for a second, John.
Yeah.
It may be that when somebody says we should put our recommendations in there, it may be that all that's necessary or all that anyone's thinking is recommended by the finance committee, not recommended by the finance committee, and the reasons aren't given.
Yeah, if that is what is wanted, then I have no problem at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, then there's no difficulty that we would be creating for ourselves. Yeah.
And then if somebody really wants to know more, they could ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when the article comes up, John will let them know what some of the reasons why are.
Yeah.
Since he's a spokesperson.
I was waiting for the rest of Scott's sentence. They could ask whom.
Well, I made sure who it was.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
John, your salary covers that, so you'd be okay doing it.
Okay. On to the document.
Okay.
Yes.
You got the latest draft I sent around. Draft 4 is actually about draft 6, but it's only of ones we've all seen. It's draft 4, and this is the form that it would take in the book. I've used the template from past years. There's this great big half a page thing on the report of the finance committee, and then this is about how things would be spaced in the document, and the document is spread out evenly across the page rather than being left justified. So this is what it would look like. I made a comment about a couple of places I changed some wording. There are another couple of small places where I did some things. But if you have questions when we go through it, I'll bring them up. They're nothing big. The thing that I wrote new was this overview. And I took part of what we had written before for the opening and just went ahead and put it here in the overview. And not going to go through the usual statements we make about we had so much in state aid from this year compared to last year, and we had this much in Chapter 70 money compared to this year and last year, and so I just skipped all that because first of all, we have no idea what the real numbers are going to be when the legislature gets finished, and second of all, it just doesn't seem as important as getting people to try to understand what the nature of the crisis are that could be impending. So, how do you feel about that?
I don't have any.
I thought it was well written, John. I thought it read well.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
The conclusion portion is basically the same. I put in a few extra words to make it clear where some of the stuff was coming from. As I read it before, there were a number of places where we knew what we were talking about, but if you didn't have some of the background based on what was said, you weren't necessarily going to be able to tell whether we were talking about the Granby budget or the state budget or the school budget or the school budget requested by the school. So I tried to clean all that up a little bit. So there's some extra words in a lot of these things compared to the previous draft that are done just for that. Oh, and in the small businesses, I changed the changes to significant changes rather than I think we had noticeable changes. I just strengthened that word too.
Question on the last line of the first page.
Yeah.
You got $1 million of Granby's free cash, but the number's really 1.5 million. So I don't know whether you're just rounding it off for the sake of making a comment or trying to be exact.
Actually, I had Sharon read this too, and she had the same question. The short we're using 1.5 million in free cash. Not all of it is being used to make up the shortfall. We're only using $1 million to offset the tax revenue. There's about $500,000 that is some small capital items and the article on paving, on highway paving, and the article on tree cutting. So that's the mixture. It's later on. I mentioned a mixture of someplace in here. I talk about us. Oh, at the first paragraph on the third page. I say the recommended budget includes using the entire $1.5 million in free cash to fund some projects and small capital items and to make up for the expected reduction in state aid. So I didn't know if it was going to be worthwhile to bring that up in the beginning. People will get to it later on. And at this point, they won't know what these different figures are. I think by the time I actually mentioned the 1.5 million, I think that I've tried to cover this difference between the 1 million and the 1.5 million in that paragraph later on. So if we're worried about it, I'll try to work at some figures here, but I'd hope that the figures later on would clarify that. Again, now Sharon's problem was that she'd been hearing me talk about the 1.5 million also for some time. And so she was saying, well, you only got $1 million here, but that's all we're really using for subsidy.
Well, yeah, but we're using it to make up the shortfall, but we then used it so that the shortfall became smaller. If you understand what I'm saying. In other words, to my way of thinking, we used $1.5 million of free cash to support the appropriation request. And to me, that's the budget.
The, looking for some figures here. I am going to disappear from the screen for a minute and get a figure off my computer about something. So I'll be back in just a minute while I get this figure. Okay, the figure is in, when I put together a spreadsheet, which I think I sent everybody, that compared the draft 2 to the draft 1. Draft 1 being the budget that came out right after the governor's budget. And draft 2 being basically what we're looking at before the additional changes to a reduction in busing and the other couple other changes that were made. But between the first and the second one, the reduction in income was about $1.4 million. So basically the 1.5 million in free cash that we're using, looked at from that point of view, pretty much just offsets the income that we thought we had available to us when draft 1 came out. So I was comfortable myself in saying that these numbers match up pretty well, although it's not exactly the way they're being allocated. I was surprised when I went back and looked at it. They were so close. But I entertain a suggestion on how else to state it.
How about using the word all? And get rid of the dollar amount. I think that's the point I'm trying to make, that for this budget, regardless of the way somebody structured it to begin with, the fact of the matter is we're using all our free cash to come out with something that's balanced.
All right, we could say we're prepared for a 1.3 million reduction in state aid. If we just say we're using, right now I'm saying the million free cash make up this shortfall. Just say instead that we're and additional borrowing and using all of Granby's available using all of Granby's free cash to make up the shortfall or to make up the difference in the budget.
Is that a question or a statement?
That's a question. And so the meeting uses a combination of operational cuts, capital cuts, additional borrowing, and all of Granby's free cash. All Granby's free cash to make up this shortfall or to balance this budget.
You were
I
trying
mean,
to
that's
deal
what
with,
we're doing. So, I mean, it's right, John.
Just change shortfall to balance the budget, and then don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Or that.
yeah, you were dealing, when you were writing it, you were probably dealing with the shortfall.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm talking about the shortfall of on the whole budget, not just the
Yeah.
shortfall from the way we were before.
And that's pretty much the realization I came to when I was trying to write up what the difference between the million that we say we're using for a shortfall and the $1.5 million that we're using in free cash. So if we leave out shortfall and make it and all of Granby's free cash to balance the recommended budget.
Yeah, that works.
Sounds good to me.
As a practical matter, when you were talking about the other items there where we, the combination of this, that, and the other thing, you didn't specify what the dollar amount of those was to begin with, so.
Yeah.
So adding one more item really is what you're doing to the batch.
Okay. Anything else on the first page?
No,
Okay, second page, which is, first two paragraphs are the end of the conclusion section. The paragraph that I'm comfortable enough, but not completely thinking it's the absolute best way to say it, is the very short paragraph said, it's impossible for all those parameters to hold true and still cut Granby's total expected state aid by 20%. I've changed what we had before. It says that there's far less than, should be than, far less than 1.3 million in Granby's expected general government state aid. This harks back to saying on the first page that we're going to be 1.3 million cuts in state aid. And to say that there is not that much money outside of the school aid. And I don't know if even be better to say outside of the school aid or leave it like it is, or if there's a better way to say it. But it's sort of the heart of our statement that what we've been told is full of contradictions. So I think we should leave in the sentence about it's going to be impossible to keep these parameters and cut state aid by 20%. It's the question of, is this an adequate explanation of why it's impossible, or is there a better way to say it?
you could say maybe that the reduction of 1.3 million in state aid or total state aid is greater than
The
general
non-school.
government.
Well, yeah, that's
Making it wordier, but
well, right now it said there's far less than 1.3 million Granby's affected general government state aid. I could say Granby's expected general government state aid is far less than the $1.3 million cut.
yeah,
Or I could change the emphasis a little bit and said that the total aid to Granby does not have $1.3 million outside of aid to schools.
got a coin?
Huh?
Got a coin? You can flip it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd like to leave the word schools out of there just so we're not,
right, okay,
sometimes people take words as divisive, you know?
right, right, it's fine with me. I mean, I left them out the first time, so. All right, it may be a more straightforward sentence to say that Granby's expected general government state aid is less than the $1.3 million projected cut.
I think that's a better way to say it than the way I suggested, which was sort of the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
I like that, John.
Okay. Okay. I didn't have any other problems on page 2, but then I'm not asking myself.
You don't have to ask me. I didn't have any more. I didn't have that one.
Okay. Uh, Any, Scott?
I'm good.
Okay. Rich?
Yeah, I'm good, John.
Okay. The next page, page 3, starts with the Granby's approach to the situation. And I think the thing here is that, as I mentioned, basically the last sentence of the first paragraph, is this an appropriate way to convey the message that we're using $1 million in free cash? And that it does a number of things, makes up for the expected reduction, but also in fact just funds some of the budget. And I think as it's said, I think that matches up with our statement of using all of Granby's free cash to balance the recommended budget.
Yep.
And I think without the previous amount mentioned before, it's liable to just be read as it was intended to be read, without bringing up any unnecessary complications. And also, again, then on the third paragraph, again, the last sentence, if it is not cut and the state makes additional cuts in the general government aid, there will be an even smaller amount in Granby's general government income to support the budget. I cut through a lot of other kind of wording that I had in the previous version and just use the word in general government income to support the budget, without trying to be more specific, but just to the point here is not talking about any specific dollar amounts. It's just that we're going to be out of balance if this happens. And then finally, the fourth paragraph in that section, I changed the punctuation on incidentally, and either a comma or a colon there works fine grammatically. But I think that there's a little more punch to the sentence. I think it calls attention to the sentence a little more by having a colon after the intentionally. And I think we want to make sure that people, in fact, read this sentence.
I don't have any other suggestions, John.
Okay,
Yeah, so it looks good to me, John.
Yeah, I'm fine.
okay. The appropriate use of funds, I think I basically left that alone. Yeah, I don't recall changes in that.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think we did a good job on that the first time through, basically. Once we got the paragraphs organized into appropriate sections, much easier to read that. Okay, last page, near future.
I've got a question on that one, or a
Okay.
suggestion.
Okay,
In the fourth paragraph, or the last paragraph of that thing.
Yeah.
You use the terminology to continue subsidizing the schools. I think I'd prefer to use words to the effect of supporting the schools at this level rather than subsidizing it, because
excellent. So if Chapter 70 is reduced for multiple years and required net school spending is also reduced, there is unlikely to be any reasonable way to continue supporting the schools at this level.
Yeah.
At the current level.
at the current level, yeah, what?
And the cutting public safety resources and raising property taxes seem quite unpalatable options. Okay, I like that change. I think what I was, now I think about it, I think what I was doing is that because we were talking about subsidizing the budget to make up the shortfall, I just carried that on over, and it's
Yeah.
better. I like this phrasing better. Again, avoid some unnecessary conflicting or rather confusing statements. Anything else in the near future section?
Not for me.
No, I thought it was good.
Okay, then the conclusion piece. This was the other thing, I guess, that I made up after the last meeting. And I was influenced again by the conversation we had one more time. Should we heavily, here we go, this is subsidy. Should we heavily subsidize this budget? Should we cut budgets and preserve cash?
I mean, we've talked that one through, John, and you know, I thought our decision was, look, we're gonna get through this year and see what we have to do for next year, because we just don't know enough. But next year we'll have a better picture, and we may have to, burn the furniture next year.
Yeah.
On the
Okay.
other, my head, I just did it. I've been doing some numbers, and I sort of think that if we get cut 20% this year and get half of it back next year, I think we can get through next year too.
Yeah,
It's a little tight, but I think we can get there.
I think so. As long as somebody says we're going to get back to the previous levels in 3 years, it's not going to be able to go on as a way of life.
No.
And I think we probably will have a problem if it goes on at 20%. If it's a bigger cut than 20% this year, or if it's 20% this year and next year, those are much different circumstances for us than a 20% cut, 10% cut.
Yeah.
Because
Take away another 600,000 from our numbers. What do we do with the budget now? If all of a sudden they get passed, that's pain already if that should occur.
okay.
20% would be catastrophic.
I would not be happy with a 20% cut.
No.
That's going to be some conversations that are going to have to be done at a level of cooperation, which we haven't entirely seen yet. Okay, if there's nothing else on that one, what I will do is I'll make these changes right away and get them back to you, and you can take a look and see if it reflects what we said in those spots. And then I'll be able to send this on to Chris in the morning as to what our final version is. So if that okay with you, if I make changes right away and get the okay. All right. then we ought to have
How
a
about
vote.
took a vote to approve the report with the changes that we discussed here. That way, there's no question that what you submit is what the committee wanted.
I would, yeah, I was just gonna suggest that too. So I'll take a motion to make this our report, given that the changes are made that we've just talked about.
So
A
moved.
motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second,
Any further discussion? Not then all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anything else we need to talk about tonight? I'm going to ask Kathy to set meetings for next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And this is sort of the cautionary approach that we've taken in virtually all past years of to have it down ahead of time that a meeting is set for the time. I honestly don't expect to use them, that we may have to use one. But in case something comes up, we will have a meeting scheduled. We'll be able to talk in an official meeting about it. So don't be surprised if you get a notice about meetings, but that's what it'll be. It's in just in case scheduling of meetings, and we'll cancel them day to day. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, anybody want to talk about anything else? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
I'll second it.
I'll say aye. 4 meetings this week, guys, but come on, 4?
Excuse me? All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you very much for attending. I appreciate the work.
Thank you,
Night.
John.
Night.
Thanks, John.
This conference will now be recorded. This conference is no longer being recorded.